He smiled at me during my firing meeting and said, "We can get 3 junior engineers for your salary." Cost cutting has nothing to do with him or her. I'm 55 years old, and my name is Victor Hale. I've been the lead systems engineer at Veltria Housing for 18 years. Their infrastructure was built from scratch, every expansion was planned, and I kept everything running so smoothly that the leaders forgot how much the company relied on me until they decided they could no longer pay me. Standing next to me was Graham Vickers, the company's new chief technology officer who had only been there for 6 months. A 42-year-old man with expensive glasses and an MBA from Cornell. He was brought in to bring things up to date, which reportedly meant firing the most experienced workers first. Diane from HR slid a folder across the table and said, "The severance package is very good. 2 months' pay plus the leave time you've already earned." I gave him the folder, nodded, and asked, "Thank you. Is that all you have to say?" Graham looked almost sad. He might have thought I was going to fight, or say I would sue. Tell him something about how hard I was being that he can tell the board. "What would you like me to say? Most people in your position have questions, concerns." I mused. "That seems pretty clear to me," I said. Graham and Diane looked at each other, both confused by my calm. They didn't understand that I wasn't keeping cool. I just finished. "There's a modification," Graham continued. "Well, we'd appreciate it if you could help us with the transition. It will be helpful for the new engineering team to get some help with the system design. It could be a consulting job for a few weeks. I told them I'd think about it, but I knew I wouldn't." There was a handshake. I cleaned off my desk without being asked. There is enough work in one wooden box to last 18 years. A few co-workers looked away awkwardly as I said goodbye because they were afraid the same thing would happen to them. My phone rang as I walked to my truck in the garage. My database supervisor, Alan, sent me a text message 12 years ago. "Hey, this is Vic. The whole team is going crazy." I did not answer. I was drinking whiskey on my deck at home, which had a view of Lake Ontario, while watching the sun turn the water copper. I felt a hand on my shoulder from my wife, Elaine. "I," responded with a shrug. "What are you going to do now?" But Graham didn't know or care to learn that I hadn't just built their systems. He said, "Something will turn up." Because the company would not pay for a proper documentation team, I did large parts by myself, with very little documentation. The deep redundancies, hidden security layers, and complicated network design were all things that only I understood, and I had no plans to tell anyone else about them. I started working at Veltria Housing when it was still called Bayview Properties. It was a small company that managed 4 apartment buildings and had 12 workers. 2 desktop computers, a fax machine, and a dial-up internet connection were all they had for IT. Despite having a consulting job in Syracuse, the owner, Harold Bay, hired me as his employee. I was told that we were growing. We need someone who can make something strong for us. In 18 years, I turned that simple setup into an all-in-one property management system that took care of 63 properties in 4 states and did everything from background checks and tenant applications to repair requests and rent collection. As the company grew, I changed, improved, and honed it piece by piece. Harold retired 5 years ago, and his son Justin sold the business to a private equity group. The new owners changed the name of the business to Veltria Housing. They kept me because they liked what I had made. But things started to shift. Long-term stability lost its importance in favor of new executives, new objectives, and quarterly goals. The warning signs I needed came slowly. At first, they turned down my idea for a paperwork team. They said it was too pricey. The next quarter is when we'll do it. No one ever got that quarter. Then they hired young MBA-type experts who talked about changing the way property management was done and using cloud solutions. They would stare blankly as I talked about how our system worked, and then suggest off-the-shelf options that wouldn't work with our custom infrastructure. I didn't give up. I kept telling them why their plan wouldn't work and showing them the custom code that made our system special. In the end, they stopped asking me to meetings where they planned things. It was seen by Elaine before I did. When they were having dinner one night, she told him, "They're firing you." In response, I told her, "You need to get ready." She replied, "That might be the problem. They need me. No one else knows how the whole system works." Graham became their new CTO 6 months ago. He started talking about standardization and replacing old systems right away after coming from a banking software business. He hired 3 graduate engineers who were just starting out. They were following me around and asking me about the system. I told them the answers, but I could tell they weren't getting it. How could they do that? It had taken me years to figure out how those systems worked together and add the backups that made sure everything ran smoothly when something went wrong. Graham visited my workplace last week. He said in a relaxed way, "Quick meeting tomorrow morning. Only a check-in every 3 months. That should have been obvious." 2 weeks after I was fired, I got my first call. It rang while I was working. On my application in my home office, Stephen Vickers. The call went to voicemail. "Hey Victor, this is Graham. The tenant site is giving us trouble. There is work being done by the junior team, but they are having trouble understanding how some of your code is structured. Could you please call us back? It will only be a short meeting." The message was gone, and I went back to my resume. That same day, 3 more calls came in, and each message sounded more and more desperate. By nightfall, Alan had texted me. "All day, the system has not been working. Requests for maintenance are not being handled. Graham's going crazy." HR's Diane called the next morning. "Hey Victor, I hope all is well with you. We'd like to talk about a short-term working agreement to help with some system problems right now, which is why I'm calling. The amount of money would be very generous. I chose to use my phone. Are you so kind? $300 per hour, with a 4-hour minimum." In response, I hung up the phone and sat down at my kitchen table, looking out at the lake. Elaine brought me a coffee and asked, "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking they're finding out exactly what I'm worth." Over the next 3 days, the calls increased. Graham, Diane, even Justin Bayou, who was still on the board. The tenant portal was down. The maintenance scheduling system was throwing errors. The automatic payment processing had failed, affecting thousands of residents. I didn't respond to any of them. On day 4, an email arrived from Devlin Systems, a regional competitor to Veltria. They managed fewer properties but had been expanding rapidly. The email was from their director of technology, Lawrence Devlin himself. "Victor, I heard about your situation at Veltria. We've always admired your work from afar. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities with us? We're looking to upgrade our entire property management infrastructure." I replied and set up a meeting for the following day. That evening, as Elaine and I were preparing dinner, my doorbell rang. Graham Vickers stood on my porch, his designer glasses slightly askew, his normally immaculate suit wrinkled. "Victor, I apologize for dropping by unannounced, but we have an emergency situation. The entire system is down. Nothing is working. The team can't figure out what's wrong or how to fix it." I leaned against the doorframe. "That sounds serious." "It is. We need your help. The board has authorized me to offer you a substantial consulting fee. $500 per hour, whatever it takes." I thought about the cardboard box in my garage. 18 years of work reduced to a few mementos. I thought about nothing personal, just cost cutting. I thought about the documentation team. They'd never approved. "I'm sorry to hear about your troubles," I said quietly, "but I have an interview tomorrow. Something will turn up, just like I thought." I closed the door on his stunned face and went back to making dinner. For the first time since my termination, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just clarity. I wasn't going to help them fix what they'd broken. The interview with Lawrence Devlin went better than expected. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Rochester, away from both companies' offices. "I've followed your work for years," Lawrence said, stirring his coffee. "That integrated property management system you built at Veltria is legendary in our industry. Nobody else has anything close to it." "Thank you," I said. It took time. That's what I want to talk about time. We're looking to build something similar, but we don't want to start from scratch. We need someone who understands the architecture, the integration points, the security layers. Someone who can build us something better than what's out there. I'm interested. Lawrence smiled. Good, because I'm prepared to offer you the position of Chief Systems Architect. Full benefits, stock options, and a salary 20% higher than what you were making at Veltria. It was a good offer. Too good, almost. Why me? I asked. There are younger engineers out there, cheaper ones. Lawrence laughed. You sound like your former employer. We tried that route, hired 3 bright young engineers from top schools. They built us something sleek and modern that crashes every time we get more than 100 simultaneous users. We don't need cheap, we need reliable. I accepted the offer the next day. Meanwhile, Veltria's problems were escalating. Alan kept me updated through occasional texts. The system had been partially restored, but critical functions were still failing. They'd brought in an expensive consulting firm that specialized in legacy system recovery. A week after I started at Deline, Graham called again. Victor, please. This is getting serious. We've lost access to payment records for the past 3 months. Tenants are complaining about incorrect charges. The consulting team says they need your input on the database structure. I was tempted to ignore it, but something made me pick up. Graham, I'm employed elsewhere now. Exclusive contract. I'm afraid I can't help you. We'll double whatever they're paying you for just 2 days of your time. It's not about the money. Then what is it about revenge? Are you enjoying watching us struggle? I paused, considering my answer carefully. No, Graham, I'm not enjoying it. But you made a business decision. You decided my experience wasn't worth the cost. Now you're discovering what that actually means. The board wants to discuss bringing you back. Full salary plus a signing bonus. For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it quickly faded. Going back would solve nothing. The same executives who decided I was expendable would be waiting for the next opportunity to cut costs. I appreciate the offer, but I've made a commitment to Devlin Systems. Graham's voice hardened. You know, there could be legal implications if we discover you intentionally made our systems difficult to maintain. Non-compete clauses, intellectual property concerns. There it was, the threat I'd been expecting. The system is exactly as it was when the company repeatedly denied my requests for a documentation team, I replied evenly. Every line of code belongs to Veltria as specified in my employment contract. I've taken nothing with me except my experience, but feel free to have your lawyers contact mine. I hung up, hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from anger I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. The last insult was the claim that I had done something to hurt them. When I started at Devlin, I was starting from scratch and building systems correctly from the ground up. There was full documentation, training programs for the tech team, and backups that would keep things from going wrong like they were. I was no longer going to look back, but I also wasn't going to help them. A few things had to be toughly learned. I had a surprise visitor in my new office a month after starting at Devlin Systems. My old database administrator, Alan, was standing in the hallway with a laptop bag in an awkward way. He asked, "Any time for lunch?" I asked Alan. "Over sandwiches? At a nearby deli?" He told me what was going on at Veltria. "It's worse than you think," he said, his voice quieting down even though it was after lunch. "They've lost access to historical data going back 3 years. The backup systems are corrupted somehow. The consulting firm is saying they might need to rebuild from scratch." I wasn't surprised. The backup system had multiple redundancies and security protocols that needed to be followed precisely. Skip one step and the entire process would fail in a way designed to protect tenant data from unauthorized access. "That's not all," Alan continued. "I found something when I was trying to help the consultants understand the payment processing system. Graham had been planning your termination for months. He'd been meeting with the board, convincing them that your custom infrastructure was too expensive to maintain. How do you know this? Alan pulled out his laptop and showed me a series of emails he discovered in the system archives. Emails between Graham and the board discussing the legacy staff reduction plan and specifically naming me as the first target. He told them they could replace you with cheaper engineers and transition to off-the-shelf solutions within 6 months, Alan said. He projected cost savings of over $1 million annually. I read through the emails, feeling a strange detachment. One line from Graham stood out. Hale's custom systems are unnecessarily complex. He's made himself indispensable by design, not necessity. There's more. Alan said the private equity firm that owns Veltria is planning to sell. They've been prepping for this for over a year. Graham was brought in specifically to cut costs and make the company look more profitable before the sale. Now it all made sense. The push for standardization, the resistance to proper documentation, the sudden focus on reducing senior staff costs. It wasn't about improving the company. It was about dressing it up for a quick flip. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Alan closed his laptop. Because I quit yesterday, and I'm not the only one. Half the IT department has left. The consultants are estimating at least 6 months to restore full functionality, maybe longer. He hesitated. And because Veltria's biggest client, Westbrook Properties, is considering jumping ship, they've lost faith in the management system. I thought about the implications. Westbrook represented nearly 30% of Veltria's revenue. Losing them would be devastating, especially with a sale pending. What will you do now? I asked. Alan grinned. Actually, I was hoping Devlin might be hiring database administrators. Later that afternoon, I spoke with Lawrence about bringing Alan on board. He agreed immediately. We were building a team brick by brick with people who understood what it meant to create systems that lasted. That evening, I received another call from Graham. This time, his voice had lost its authoritative edge. Victor, please. The situation is critical. Westbrook is threatening to terminate their contract. The board is questioning my decisions. We need your help. I'm sorry, Graham. I can't help you. Name your price. Anything. It's not about price. It's about respect for experience, for the work that goes into building something right the first time. The line was silent for a moment. You knew this would happen, he said finally. You knew exactly what would break and when. No, Graham. I just knew what I had built and what it took to maintain it. Information I tried to share many times. I ended the call feeling neither triumph nor regret. Just the quiet certainty that some lessons can only be learned through failure. The opportunity came faster than I expected. 2 months into my role at Devlin Systems, Lawrence called me into his office. I just got off the phone with Jeffrey Westbrook, he said, referring to the CEO of Westbrook Properties. They're officially terminating their contract with Veltria next month. They want to know if we can handle their portfolio. Westbrook Properties managed over 10,000 units across the Northeast. It would more than double Devlin's current operations. We're not ready for that kind of scale, I admitted. The new system is coming along, but it's only halfway there. Lawrence leaned forward. What would it take to get ready if we had to? I thought about it. 3 more senior engineers, dedicated server infrastructure, and at least 8 weeks of development. Time. Even then, it would be tight. Jeffrey's desperate. Veltria's failures are affecting their reputation with tenants. He's willing to give us 12 weeks and fund the infrastructure expansion. This was the moment, the turning point. If Devlin took on Westbrook and succeeded, it would establish us as a serious competitor in the industry. If we failed, it could sink both companies. Let me think about the architecture, I said. I'll drop a plan by tomorrow. That night, I barely slept. I sketched system diagrams, mapped data migration pathways, considered scaling challenges. By morning, I had a plan, ambitious but achievable, a hybrid approach that would let us onboard Westbrook's Properties in stages, minimizing disruption. When I presented it to Lawrence, he studied it carefully. This is solid, he said finally. But I notice you've included a substantial documentation phase that adds 3 weeks to the timeline. It's non-negotiable, I replied. That's where Veltria failed. We document everything from day one. We train the team on every component. No single points of failure. Lawrence nodded. I'll take your word for it. Let's move forward. The next weeks were intense. We hired 5 more engineers, including 2 who had recently left Veltria. Alan built a database migration tool that could translate Veltria's data structure into our new system. I designed a modular architecture that could scale with Westbrook's needs. Halfway through the project, I received an email from Justin Bayou, the former owner's son, who still sat on Veltria's board. Victor, I want to apologize for how things ended. The board was misled about the implications of letting you go. Graham has been removed as CTO. We're struggling to recover, and Westbrook's departure will hit us hard. If you're ever interested in coming back, the door is open. I didn't respond. 10 weeks into our 12-week timeline, we were ready for a staged rollout. Westbrook's smallest region, comprising 2,000 units in western New York, would migrate first. If successful, the remaining regions would follow. The day before the migration, Lawrence called me into his office again. A familiar face was waiting. Jeffrey Westbrook himself. So, you're the system architect? All good, Jeffrey smiled. He says you built us something that won't break down every time we add a new property, something that will grow with us. Jeffrey stood up to shake my hand. Lawrence has told me a lot about you, how things are supposed to go. I believe you worked for Veltria before. I gave him a nod, but I wasn't sure what he meant. They are having a bad time. As Westbrook leaves and the private equity company tries to sell, their system is still not fully functional. There aren't many buyers who are interested. He waited. Except for one. What person is that? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Lawrence said that Devlin Systems. We might make an offer that is a big drop from what they were worth 6 months ago. As I thought about what that meant, I looked between them. If that happens, Jeffrey said, we'd want the integration to be led by someone who knows both companies well. Someone who can take what's useful from Veltria's system and move it all to your new architecture. Could you please ask me to work on that? I was clear. Lawrence gave a nod. That is, only if the deal goes through and you are okay with it. I considered the paradox. The company that fired me, the system I'd built, and the people I'd taught could all be coming back under my control. It was finally me who said, I'd be willing. There is one catch, though. We do it the right way. Complete instructions, the right training, and no shortcuts. No problem. Lawrence said, we've learned that lesson. As I walked back to my office, I felt no vindication, no desire for revenge, just the simple satisfaction of knowing that good work done right, eventually, speaks for itself. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of what had once been RIA Housing's headquarters. The sign now read, Delin Integrated Property Management. The acquisition had gone through for less than a quarter of what the company had been valued at before my departure. Lawrence and I walked through the office greeting former Veltria employees who would be staying on through the transition. Some looked away awkwardly. Others smiled with relief. A few, those who had worked closely with me over the years, nodded with quiet understanding. Graham was gone along with most of the executive team that had approved my termination. Justin Bayou had stayed on as a consultant, helping ease the transition with legacy clients. When we reached the server room, my old domain, I paused. Through the glass, I could see the hardware I'd specified, the blinking lights of systems I'd designed. Want to go in? Lawrence asked. Don't worry about it, I said. We'll be moving everything to the new infrastructure anyway. The rest of the Veltria staff had gathered in the main conference room for the announcement. Lawrence introduced me as the Chief Integration Officer in charge of the technical transition. Many of you already know Victor, he said. He built the systems that ran this company for almost 20 years. Now he'll be guiding us through the integration of both companies' technologies into something better than either had before. As I looked out at the faces, some familiar, some new, I felt no triumph, no desire to say, I told you so. what would be the point? Instead, I spoke briefly about the transition plan, the timeline, the support that would be available to everyone during the process. I emphasized that no one would be left behind due to cost-cutting measures. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. 1 year after the acquisition, Devlin Integrated Property Management had become the largest property management company in the Northeast. The migration was complete, with all properties now running on the new system I designed, fully documented, properly staffed, and functioning smoothly. On a crisp autumn morning, I drove to the office for a final meeting with Lawrence. The leaves along Lake Ontario had turned brilliant shades of red and gold, a fitting backdrop for the conclusion of this chapter. "The board approved your proposal," Lawrence said as soon as I sat down. "The Technical Education Division will launch next quarter. You'll have full autonomy to design the curriculum and hire instructors. This had been my condition for staying after the integration was complete. Not a higher title or more money, but the creation of a division dedicated to training the next generation of systems engineers and architects, teaching them not just how to code, but how to build things meant to last." "Thank you." I said, "That means a lot." "No, thank you," Lawrence replied. "What you've built here, it's remarkable. Not just the technology, but the culture around it, the documentation, the knowledge sharing, the emphasis on quality over quick fixes." Later that afternoon, I cleared out my integration office. Unlike my hasty exit from Veltria, this was a planned transition to my new role. As I packed my things, Justin Bayview knocked on the door. "Got a minute?" "When we got to the building's small patio," he asked. "My father asked about you. He's retired in Florida now, but still keeps up with company news." "How is Harold?" "He was glad to hear that you were back in a way." I asked. "Fine." Justin paused. He always said, "Firing you would be the worst thing this company could do," and it turned out he was right. I didn't know what to say, but I did. I learned something from this. Justin continued, "Value isn't always clear until it's gone." As I drove home along the lake, I thought about how important it is to care, have experience, do things right the first time, and how people build systems that last. I hadn't been after payback. I didn't have to. I just kept going and built something better that would last longer than any one choice or short-term thinking. When you feel like you're not being appreciated, sometimes the best thing to do is show how valuable you are somewhere else and let the results speak for themselves.